Expired, and the chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Virginia's 4th District for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Castor, for holding this hearing, and to the witnesses for being here. I want to start with saying that the dismantling of the federal government agencies that we are seeing right now is alarming. And the Trump administration's unprecedented attacks with the help of Elon Musk on our federal workforce and critical programs harm all Americans, regardless of who they voted for. This damage affects every industry in our nation, including the energy industry. As a state senator, I led the passage of the Virginia Clean Economy Act in 2020, making the Commonwealth the first Southern state with a 100% clean energy standard. And it has spurred economic growth as clean energy jobs in Virginia have grown more than 3.5 times faster than overall employment, with over 100,000 clean energy jobs in 2022 alone. And it's driven major projects like the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project, which supports nearly 1,000 jobs and $143 million in annual economic output. Similarly, the Commonwealth's fusion systems have recently announced that they're going to build the world's first commercial fusion power plant in my district. And in over 5 years, this facility could generate enough clean energy to power 150,000 Virginia homes. And given the increased energy demand that we have heard so much about in this hearing today, I am perplexed by the Trump administration's plan, as outlined in Project 2025, to kill homegrown wind and solar and clean energy, illegally rob thousands of energy projects across America of billions of dollars of investment, and declare a nonsensical energy emergency that simply doesn't exist. And the administration's sole focus on building more fossil fuel infrastructure that locks us into decades of harmful emissions that not only hurt our environment, but our national security interests. As a former member of the Armed Services Committee, as we have seen how climate change impacts our military readiness, operations, and our service members. As the largest naval base in the world sees more and more storms and rain that bisects the base in half when it floods, and people can't get from one side to the other, as just one example. Now, I also want to address the Trump administration's posture towards liquefied natural gas. In December, the Department of Energy released a study on the impacts of LNG exports, and Secretary Granholm made clear that allowing unconstrained LNG exports would increase domestic wholesale natural gas prices by 30% and cost households well over $100 a year. This, in addition to the climate impact and environmental harms to overburden communities near export facilities. And so, Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to enter Secretary Granholm's statements into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's also worth noting that last year, House Republicans tried to pass a bill to eliminate the requirement for the Department of Energy to review whether LNG exports serve the public interest, even though the public interest standard has been used for over a century for just about every energy project ever done. And so I want to ask Mr. O'Connor if you could explain the importance of the Natural Gas Act's requirement for the Department of Energy to ensure that LNG exports are in the public interest.
Sure, thank you for the question. So as you noted, the Natural Gas Act requires the Department of Energy to evaluate whether an LNG export application is in the public interest. It's my personal view, and I think something that's probably consistent with Mr. McClellan's view, that LNG exports to NATO allies, for instance, is in the national interest because we're supporting critical allies. But I think at the same time, it's also important to evaluate the impacts to Americans and domestic gas prices. And I think the public interest test that's performed, or public interest analysis that's performed, I think reasonably credits the national security benefits and the investment benefits that LNG exports might bring to the United States and to our allies, while also balancing concerns against the impacts to consumers, which I think we'd all want to know before making any decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I would just note, after having spent 25 years as a utility regulatory lawyer, the public interest standard has been used in every single energy electric project component at the state level and the federal level for over a decade. And I think any effort to roll it back is dangerous indeed. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back, and the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Ohio's 6th